Hi, my name is Inédith from Collection Inédith, and today I want to share with you everything I've learned in the past 10 years about paper piecing. I've been hooked on the technique since 2007, and I love designing patterns for paper piecing. I will show you the type of paper I use, my favorite tool, and the basic principles. But first, for the beginner, what is paper piecing? It's a technique that allows quilters to create and design natural curves with a very high level of precision. Here how it goes. You trace the templates on paper, you place the fabric on the right side of the paper, you sew on the wrong side of the paper, and when you're done, you tear off the paper. Here are a few of my designs entirely made with the paper piecing technique. What kind of paper do I use? A poor quality of loose leaf paper, the kind that can be printed, and the kind that stays flat when you press it. There are many products on the market, but I favor most of all the worst quality of loose leaf paper that kids use at school. You can use it in a printer, which saves a lot of work since you only have to trace one side of the paper. Here's what you need. You need scissors for papers, scissors for fabric, a blue pen, a red pen, and a ruler. And here's my favorite tool, a pair of 5-inch hemostatic forceps. If you can put your hands on this tool, you will be set. I use them to tear off the small bits of paper I can't reach with my fingers. They are awesome. You will also need a tracing table or a light box. I built mine because I wanted a big one, so I used only materials I had on hand at the time. I made the base of the table with 2x4s. I added a glass top table from a table I didn't use anymore, and I installed a fluorescent with daylight bulbs that I turned upwards. Let's start with the first two steps of paper piecing. First, print the templates on loose leaf paper. Second, trace the wrong side of the paper with a red pen. If you can't print the templates, you will have to trace both sides of the paper. Trace the right side of the paper with a blue pen and the wrong side of the paper with a red pen. Also, every template has its own alphanumerical sequence, and you must write the sequences on both sides of the paper. I always use a 1/2-inch seam allowance represented by the red dotted line. When you place the fabric on the paper, the fabric can sometimes shift and you won't see it until it's too late. Having this extra 1/4 inch to play with will save you a lot of time, and you won't have to use the seam ripper and start over. All you have left to do now is to cut the template on the dotted line and place the first two pieces of fabric on paper. There are 3 things to remember. First, set your sewing machine stitch to 2.0 so that your stitches are tight. You don't want to see the threads in between the two pieces of fabric when you press open the seam. Second, follow the alphanumerical sequences when you place each pieces of fabric. Third, one of the basic principles is that every piece of fabric that you place on the right side of the paper must be tested to make sure that when you unfold it, the fabric must unfold away from the center and goes outwards. I'm now ready to set the first two pieces of fabric on the paper. Place the first piece of fabric, 3A, right side up, on the right side of the paper. The fabric must cover the entire space and at least 1/2 inch more on all sides. Then place the second piece of fabric, 3B, wrong side up, directly on top of the previous fabric, 3A, and test to see if the second fabric unfolds away from the center and covers the entire 3B area plus 1/2 inch all around. Pin the fabric to the paper and flip it. Sew on the wrong side of the paper on the line separating 3A and 3B. You can sew a bit more than the sewing line, it's no big deal. Cut the excess fabric to 1/4 inch from the sewing line. press, then cut the excess fabric on the outer limits of the paper. Place the third piece of fabric on the table and right side up. Then place the paper with the fabric side facing the right side of the fabric on the table, as you see here. Test to see if the fabric unfolds away from the center and if it covers the entire 3C area and a bit more. Sew on the wrong side of the paper on the sewing line between 3A and 3C. Cut the excess fabric a 1/4 inch from the sewing line. Then press, and finally cut the excess fabric at the outer limits of the paper. How to assemble two sections together. Place the two sections right sides together and match the sewing lines. Pin along the sewing lines of both sections. Use as many pins as you can. The more pins, the better. Use the side of a table to place the pin. It will be easier for you. Once the pins are all set on the sewing line, add 3 pins 1.5 inches away and parallel to the sewing line. If you place your pins perpendicular to the sewing line, the sections might shift and you will have to start over. Set your machine to a 5.0 stitch. It will be easier to read the stitches if the section have shifted and you have to realign them. If the stitches match on both sides of the sections, set the stitches to 2.0 and do a final pass over the sewing line. Take off the pins and check out what you've done. Tear off the paper that covers the seam allowance. Use the hemostatic forceps to tear the little piece of paper that are hard to tear off with your fingers. Press open the seam and voila! Now you know as much as I do. All you have to do is practice, and I hope this tutorial has answered some of your questions and will be useful to you. The tutorial that you've been watching is based on my pattern titled Feathered Starflake. This pattern is available for free forever. I hope this will give you the push you need to try this technique. You will find a link to the printable document in the description below the tutorial. Don't hesitate to subscribe to my YouTube channel. You will be notified when my free block of the month becomes available every month. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.